Welcome to Risky Bitness. Have you ever watched a death metal music video and thought to yourself, wow, I really wish this were a video game? Well, you're in luck. Tecmo has just the game for you. Released in 1996 at the height of the late 90s mall goth craze, Tecmo's Deception is here to fill all your needs for vitriol, vivisection, and violence. Before we get started, I would like to thank everyone who likes, comments, and shares my videos. I really appreciate all your support. You make this worthwhile, so thank you for being awesome. I would not still be doing this if you guys weren't in my comments telling me how much you like my stuff, so thank you. Deception is a unique game, very different from anything else on a console at the time. It's a role-playing game set in the typical medieval fantasy world. However, you play not as the heroic adventurer, but as the villain. The Prince of Zemechia, next in line for the throne, arrives home from a visit to a neighboring kingdom where he met a princess whom he intends to marry. As he arrives, his father the king announces his plan to abdicate. Suddenly, the prince's sword appears from nowhere and runs the king through, killing him. The prince's brother Urius accuses the prince and he is sentenced to death in a clear plot to usurp the throne. As the prince is about to be executed, he pleads for the power to get revenge on his scheming brother and the people of Zemechia who condemned him to death. He is struck by a lightning bolt, seemingly ending his life. However, the lightning was actually a magic spell that teleports him to the Castle of the Damned. This is where the game begins. As the prince, you play in a first-person perspective. Consumed with vengeance, it is your solitary goal to have your revenge. A mysterious demoness named Astarte offers you this power if you can kill the castle's current master. In no time at all, you become a bloodthirsty monster. Killing the master, you make a pact to become the master of the castle. Your quest is to obtain the 6 evil treasures that will resurrect Satan. Instead of sending you out into the world to seek the treasures, Astarte uses her evil magic to lure those who hold the treasures to the castle. Once an invader arrives in the castle, it is up to you to use an array of deadly and disturbing traps, and sometimes kind of funny ones, and monsters to kill or capture them. There are a total of 26 missions and 6 possible endings for this game. The ending is determined by how long it takes you to finish Chapter 8, and then by the decisions that you make in the final missions. Some missions are really short, with only 1 or 2 waves of invaders, but some are much longer with multiple waves. Up to 4 invaders can enter the castle at a time, 2 on each floor. In the beginning, the invaders are unable or unwilling to move between floors, but it seems like this does change later in the game. While many of the missions serve as padding to make the game longer, some missions advance the story. Rumors that the prince is living in the castle of the damned reach his fiancée, Fianna, who eventually comes to the castle to see him. Urius, furious with the discovery that his brother is still alive, sends waves of scouts and assassins to kill the prince and anyone else who may reveal his secret. Other visitors to the castle run the gambit from very good people, like the couple who is seeking the bounty on your head to buy medicine for their sick daughter, to somewhat vile like the young woman who seeks to kill you to satisfy her vanity. While you move around the castle, you'll notice that some doors remain locked and areas remain inaccessible to you, which all seems a little curious since you are, after all, supposed to be the master of this place. As the storyline progresses, there's a consistent feeling that you're being manipulated, that you are simply a pawn in someone else's game. The flow of the game is rather simple. Each mission begins with a small story scene, and then the invaders arrive and you have an opportunity to enter strategy mode before confronting them. You can use this time to set up traps and expand the castle. Setting traps costs magic points. You will have a large pool of MP to start with, but you should be careful not to waste it. You can set a maximum of 40 traps, but you should never need nearly that many. You can't simply set the traps and wait. You must actively lure or repel your invaders and get them to walk to the location where the trap is set. You must be able to see the invader in the trap in order to activate the trap. You are defenseless against the invaders otherwise. You can't use a weapon to fight them. You instead must rely on your traps and monsters to do all your dirty work. There are 3 kinds of traps: capture, destroy, and confuse. Capture traps allow you to catch an invader. Once an invader is caught, you can kill them for gold, remove their soul for magic points, or collect the body to make monsters. Once a capture trap is activated, you must approach it to start the process. Every invader has a CT score that counts down as the trap attempts to capture them. If that reaches 0 before the green bar depletes, the invader escapes the trap. Destroy traps do damage. Damage can make the green bar for capture traps smaller, meaning it will be easier to capture the invader. However, you can also use destroy traps to kill invaders. They will leave gold behind, but you cannot extract the soul or collect the body if you kill an intruder. After taking damage, intruders will stumble around blindly for a moment, which sometimes causes them to forget all about you and wander off in another direction. Confused traps aren't very useful. They can incapacitate invaders or knock them down, causing them to temporarily stumble around as they might if they took damage. However, this seldom causes them to wander into the path of another trap. In the late game, you can use gold to upgrade your traps. During this time, you can also use the bodies you've collected to create monsters that can be unleashed upon your invaders. Monsters gain experience instead of the player, so using them is somewhat ill-advised. Expanding the castle costs gold. You can add hallways and rooms as much as you'd like from within the space on the castle map. It's debatable whether this is a good idea, as it means it can be harder to track down your invaders and make sure there are traps close to their location. On the other hand, the larger the castle is, the easier it is to separate the invaders and deal with them one at a time. In this playthrough, I built out a long hallway with several empty side rooms just so invaders would get lost wandering around. However, you get an MP bonus at the end of the mission based on how long it took, so it's not a good idea to follow an enemy down a long corridor with no traps in it. There are all types of invaders based on common fantasy archetypes like warriors, mages, thieves, and ninjas. At the end of each mission, you'll get a bonus based on how long you took and what method you used, as well as your trap success rate, damage done, and other factors. The bonus is then added to your magic points. You should be able to easily make back more in bonuses than you spend in MP each round by killing all the invaders, so it isn't really necessary to capture them unless you really want to make monsters. More traps will become available as you level up, and different room types become available as you progress through the story. Later on, you gain access to strategy rooms. You can add additional prisons, bedrooms, and other rooms like that. While hunting intruders, you can use various masks to try and lure or repel the invader. A mask will cause you to make a sound, a laugh, scream, or howl of different types. Different invaders will react differently based on the mask type used. While I have seen keys online that supposedly break it down, I found that each invader is unique. Two of the same invader type may not react the same way to the same mask. It's best to do trial and error. Each invader behaves differently. Some are afraid of you and will flee when they see you, even up to leaving the castle entirely. In that case, you have to try to trap them before they leave, but if they leave, you still can win the mission. Others will pursue you mercilessly. There are some issues with pathing though. Invaders will often walk against a pillar or a doorway. It can be a real pain when the invader can use projectiles because they can still hit you, but you can't lure them into traps. Some invaders also will turn and walk the other way if you go through a doorway, like once you're out of sight they completely forget that you're there. If you need to set additional traps after a mission has begun, you can walk to a power room or warp to the power room for a small amount of magic points. Invaders can avoid traps, and while both invaders and traps have stats that should determine whether invaders will be able to avoid them, it doesn't seem to actually matter. Most invaders seem to have certain traps that will work. It makes sense because it forces the player to set up a variety of traps instead of just one or two trap types. You could just set up the trap that has the highest success rate, but some enemies just will never be hit by it. Most notoriously, in order to get the good ending, you have to clear Chapter 8 in less than 2 minutes. But the invader will avoid every single trap, except for the ton weight, which has an abnormally high success rate against him. You'll see the stats and bio of each character at the beginning of each wave. This is supposed to provide clues as to how to deal with each invader. Between missions, Astarte can lure invaders of your choice so that you can harvest their bodies. You can unlock secret invader types by luring the right combination of invaders. Unfortunately, the lure can fail, so you may not be able to harvest as many bodies as you would have liked. There's a variety of items in the game as well. Some can heal your hit points or remove status ailments, others can be sold for lots of gold. I don't want to give away any big spoilers here, so I won't be going too much into the story details. The only detail I will give beyond the early part of the game is that which ending you get is determined by decisions that you make in the last few chapters. You can fulfill your quest and bring back Satan, or redeem yourself, and there are a number of different possible outcomes for each of those decisions. The story doesn't bear too much discussion because while it's very different from your typical RPG, it's also very simple. That's not to say it isn't a good story, it's just a very basic one without any heavy themes or major metaphors. There are some surprises and twists later on. Mostly it's just a story of royalty fighting over a throne. With a little bit of an evil twist. The best part of the story is that it's something of a choose-your-own adventure, and you get to decide in the end what the message of that story is. The soundtrack is as epic as one would expect from a PS1 RPG. Many themes are haunting or downright scary, fitting well with the gothic atmosphere of the game. The graphics, on the other hand, well, they look like early PlayStation graphics. It's lots of blocky textures, kind of cartoony and weird. At the time, this would have been considered acceptable, but they have not aged well. For this video, just as a side note, I started off using a downsampling effect, but then I found out that pretty much every texture in the game was a 3D texture, so it made more sense just to use high definition upscaling, and that seems to look fine for this game. But yeah, PS1 games, to try to get them to look good on a modern display is kind of a chore. I might do another video just on that in the future, but let me know in the comments if you're interested in a video about how to make PS1 games look good on a modern display. So the gameplay does play very nicely. It feels fast and fluid, but pressing select to bring up the menu screen does feel a little bit clumsy. The pace of the game is also really slow, so even a short gameplay session can feel like it takes forever. Another really unusual thing about Deception is the way that it handles save games. PlayStation memory cards are broken up into 15 blocks, and Deception saves consume 9 of those blocks, which is crazy. I can't think of any other game with save files that large. You're basically burning a whole memory card for this game. What's really weird about that is the way that these cards are blocked out. I don't know how many megabytes of storage are on these cards, but the way the PS1 OS looks at them, it doesn't see that anyway. It just sees blocks of a given size. It's a really weird way to handle storage. I guess at the time it just made sense, but you'll see today there's no such thing as that anymore. I remember really liking this game back in 1996, but today it feels a little bit tedious. I found myself really aching for a change of scenery from the castle. Building more rooms kind of helps with this because you can design your own map, but everything still looks the same. I decided not to finish the game this time around because I got bored. I think this was just a novel title at its time, but it really hasn't aged all that well. Overall, Tecmo's Deception is a unique and disturbing game that was critically well received during its time. I don't remember hearing much about this game, apart from a feature in PlayStation Magazine back in the day, so I don't know how well it did sales-wise. Nobody else I know had it back in the day. It must have done pretty well, because it has spawned a number of sequels, and most recently it was Deception 4: The Nightmare Princess, which is actually the 6th game in the series. As a side note, I don't know if that actually was a feature, or if I just kept seeing the ads. I think I just kept seeing the ads in gaming magazines, and being the, teenage goth that I was, I went for it. The sequels introduced various changes, many of which are huge improvements over the original. However, the franchise has moved very far away from the original formula, and none of them are quite like the original. I would say that if you want to experience a PS1 game that is unique and extremely dark, Deception is absolutely worth a playthrough. While some elements have not aged well, you may find that simply experiencing something so different from what you're used to is very refreshing, especially if you grew up as a fan of horror movies and heavy metal. I may go back to this game and finish it at some point. If I do, I'll post a video about, how I felt about the experience of finishing the game. But right now I have so many other games I would like to play and other games I would like to make videos about. I'm unlikely to come back to this one anytime soon. Thank you for watching. If you want to help me out, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Playlists and affiliate links can be found in the description. Thank you, and until next time, game over.